Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us. Hi everyone, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us. His name is Alex Su. Alex is the Director of Business Development at Evisort, a Series A enterprise legal technology company backed by Microsoft. Before his technology career, Alex was a lawyer at Sullivan Cromwell, one of the world's most prestigious law firms, and was the first law clerk hired by the Honorable Edmond E. Chang, the first Asian American federal judge in Chicago. Alex graduated from Northwestern Law in 2010, where he served on the law review and was elected by his classmates to be the student commencement speaker. He's also a 2005 graduate of Carnegie Mellon University, where he was the president of the Taiwanese Students Association and a charter member of Lambda Phi Epsilon, a national Asian interest fraternity. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you on, Alex. Let's get started real quick. Let's dive deep into your childhood and how that influenced you to become the person that you are today.
Yeah, for sure. So my parents are immigrants from Taiwan. And when I was growing up, they were small business owners. My dad was a doctor and he opened his own practice in Queens, New York. And, initially, as I was growing up, there was some, influence where they wanted me to get a graduate degree, have a stable job. I think my mom really wanted me to be a doctor. But that wasn't in the cards for me because I just didn't want to be a doctor. I had a lot of interests, but medicine was not one of them. And so as I grew up, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And my parents said, okay, we'll support you in whatever you choose to do, as long as you don't go off and be a lawyer. Wow. Which is exactly what I ended up doing. I went to law school, right? And the reason why they didn't want me to be a lawyer is because they had such bad experiences with the legal system. Mm-hmm. There was a frivolous lawsuit here, and there was just, I don't know if you know, but doctors generally are not big fans of lawyers, especially those who go after them for medical malpractice. So my way of rebelling was to go to law school, which is probably unusual, but yeah, went off to college. Did a lot of really interesting things. I had a great experience in college, but I chose law because I really admired people who could be very articulate, could speak up for themselves. And maybe it was the movies that I watched, but I ended up deciding to go to law school and went to law school and became a practicing attorney, which was an interesting experience. It was a roller coaster. I didn't really enjoy it. It was a lot of ups and downs, but eventually found my way to the legal tech world, which is where I am now and where I work for Jerry Ting, our co-founder and CEO at Evisort, who I know has been on this show before.
Yeah. Oh, well, awesome for you to share your childhood. We love it. Out of curiosity, we watch a lot of your TikTok episodes on TikTok. Huge fans, by the way. You guys should check Alex out. So did you imagine yourself to be where you are today 10 years ago? And how has that changed throughout the years?
I never imagined it. I always thought when I went to law school that I would become a serious lawyer because that's what the successful lawyers in my field look like, right? They're very buttoned up, they're very serious, and they all kind of act and talk a certain way. I knew it wasn't in my personality, but I thought, well, this is what you do when you grow up. And maybe I should take it back a little bit because when I was in college, I did a lot of things in college that not for professional reasons, but because I enjoyed them. And a lot of them related to content creation. So I had this thing called the Xanga. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Xanga.
One of my favorites.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got to explain what the Xanga is to our listeners.
Oh, right. Know. Yeah. We have a lot of younger generation on here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things in the past that I'll probably bring up. I'm 37, so I've seen a couple of things. But Xanga, when I was in college from 2001 to 2005. It was a content platform to let people blog and share their thoughts. So this is very early days, this is before Facebook, and Xanga was my way of kind of getting myself into the world because I got Xanga my freshman year of college, and I used it as a way to create content for fun, but also to kind of build my personal brand. I was very interested in becoming popular. I wanted to throw house parties and did all this fun stuff. But Zanga was a great way for me to connect with people. And so I was constantly producing original content on Zanga. And again, this was like 15, 20 years ago, very early days. And so I knew I had this knack, right, for creating content, because I would write up posts and they would just go viral among the community at my college. And so I always had a talent for that. And I always thought it was a toy. It was kind of like a fun thing you do that's not related to your professional life. But as I'll tie it back later, but it's become very relevant to my life right now, my professional life. But I did that, and then I did Facebook, right? Facebook came out with notes. You were able to build your own profile and share your thoughts and write funny comments and things like that. And I think a lot of your listeners are probably going to, maybe some of them will be familiar with Facebook, Facebook's content platform called Notes. And then over the years, I just always created blogs. I just created a lot of content over the last 10 years, 15 years, because it was my hobby. I really enjoyed doing it. I thought I was good at it, and it just, people encouraged me. So that was me until about, I would say, a few years ago. I started putting out original content on LinkedIn, which, as you know, as many of your listeners know, LinkedIn is a professional social media platform where people are kind of talk about work and serious things. And so I started to, during COVID, I started to branch off into new ideas. I started off by posting pretty typical posts. Then I started talking about my career stories and my career journey, moving from being a lawyer to moving into the tech world, doing sales. And then I started making these videos poking fun at lawyers, because I sold to lawyers, I marketed to lawyers, I'm a lawyer. I made these videos that would be funny to lawyers because I made fun of them. And then somebody said to me, hey, you should try out this thing called TikTok, because you can actually make the videos more easily. So I was like, oh, I'll try it out. And so I posted a few videos on there, and my fourth video went massively viral. It was a video about an interaction between a paralegal and a first-year associate, first-year lawyer, not really respecting the paralegal. I guess a lot of paralegals liked it. A lot of lawyers liked it. They thought it was funny. It went viral. And so this TikTok account I had that had no followers, I picked up about 8,000 followers almost overnight. Wow. And the video ended up being viewed by 2 million people, which is more viral than anything I've ever done before. So this is my long-winded story and explanation for how I got on TikTok. And today I make TikToks, and I share them obviously on the platform, but I also download them and share them on LinkedIn, where they become a very important part of my personal marketing and marketing and branding for my company, Evisort, because it's a really good way to get in front of our potential buyers, people who want to buy the technology that we make. It's a great way to market. But this hobby has become part of my job. Yeah. So
that's awesome to hear.
Wow.
And sorry.
Go ahead.
I do want to talk a little bit more that you touched upon, the importance of having a personal brand. And I think that nowadays, especially anything that you decide to do, your personal brand will carry a lot of weight. And I think that little did you know, like 15 years ago, like what you're doing, it's like there's books written on personal branding right now. It's so important. And for our listeners who are listening, like, when you start a company or when you work at various companies, you should always find time to focus on what makes you what makes you unique and what your personal brand is, because that personal brand that you have under your name and your face and your voice and your uniqueness, no one can ever take that away from you, And I just want to touch upon that real quick.
Yeah, that's amazing, Alex. I just wanted to touch on, and also for our listeners, you can find Alex on TikTok. His handle is Legal Tech Bro, and he has almost 26,000 followers, which is amazing. And, we know that you started off on LinkedIn and you were posting content on LinkedIn and then transitioned into TikTok. You're still doing LinkedIn. And I was listening to other podcasts with you as well, and you mentioned that you like doing controversial videos, which is most likely the reason why they blow up so big, right? And so do you ever feel like you can post more content on TikTok that are controversial that you can't post on LinkedIn?
100%, Maggie. That is what I like about TikTok, is that you can try a lot of things. And the secret to the content game is you want to be authentic, and you want to also try posting as many things as possible, because you don't really know what's going to resonate with people. until you put it out there. And so I've put out some stuff on TikTok that I would die if it went up on my LinkedIn, right? but it's fun and it's an exploration and I think it's skill building. And to Brian's point, this is super important for your brand building because you're not trying to brag. Brand building is not about bragging. It's about showcasing your unique personality that many of us, young Asian American professionals, we've been taught that you got to hide it. You got to control it. You got to be neutral. You got to be professional. But these things that make us very weird and quirky, a lot of people can love it. Like they resonate with it. And so by being a little weird, by being a little aggressive in what I post on TikTok, it's brought me closer to so many people, which by the way has led to more leads and more revenue closed for my day job.
Wow.
But certainly it's not the only reason why. It's not the main reason why I do it. I do it because I enjoy doing it. I think it's fun to go on TikTok and basically make fun of all of the old serious partners that I used to work for. Mm-hmm. That's what I do it for. And I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think one thing to point out too, when you were in big law, I'm sure you had to do a lot of cold calls, right? But now that you're, transitioning into legal tech and you're getting into LinkedIn and TikTok and everything like that, people are actually coming to you now, right? So it's like personal branding is so big and it's so powerful.
Yeah. Out of curiosity too, like, have you always been really comfortable in putting yourself out there? Because when we talk to other Asian Americans or even like any Asian, Australian or Canadian people out there, there's always a sense of like, I don't know if I should put myself out there. I don't want to be so visible. How do you overcome these mental blocks for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't always comfortable with it. That's why for the most part, those early days when I was on Zanga and Facebook, these were platforms where I put myself out to only my friends.
Yeah.
I was okay with that. I think that I've always been okay with. But to put it out into the world, it was always very scary to me. And I have a few thoughts on that. And I think part of it is because of what you're told. To be a professional, you have to be kind of vanilla. You have to have a bland personality. And so I think a lot of people are scared, not just for themselves, but for what that would do to their job or their job, what their bosses would think. And so there's a lot of things in there that come into play. So what I found is that there are certain types of jobs and there are certain types of industries and certain types of roles that more enable you to put yourself out there. Tech, smaller companies, those are that type of place is going to always be more encouraging of you putting yourself out there because these, an early stage startup company, it's trying to get its name out and it'll accept any way that's done. Whereas if you work for IBM, and Brian, I know you work for IBM, I work for IBM, we know how it is there. That is not what they're into. They're not trying to get their name out. Everyone knows who they are.
Right. So
as you get older in your career, as you kind of progress, you want to figure out, well, okay, is personal branding going to be a big part of my game, of my career growth? If it is, you want to seek out those industries or those job types or companies that are going to be supportive of that. And I'll tell you, Jerry Ting, our CEO at Evisort, we've talked about this. He is super 100% behind my efforts to do this. Whereas, I've if you can think of like working at a law firm, they're always going to be like, hey, you should probably not do so much social media.
Yeah.
So it's a very different feel. So I would say that's given me a lot of confidence to put stuff out.
Awesome.
Yeah,
love it.
That's amazing. And so since posting all these TikTok videos, and the first time that we saw your video on TikTok, we actually scrolled past your video and you were talking about legal tech. And the first thing I thought of was Evisort.
Because of Jerry.
because you said AI contract management software, The first thing I thought about was Evisort and Jerry. And I was like, maybe he works at Evisort. And I saw your shirt that said Evisort. I was like, aha, he does. So I think that's amazing. And, since posting on TikTok, do you feel like more people have found out about Evisort and your company?
Absolutely. I'll say that I've been on TikTok for about 2 months now, and I'm still curious about who's out there. A lot of people ask me questions about Evisort, about legal tech. I do think that demographic on TikTok is a little bit younger, but it's changing rapidly these days. There's a lot of executives, chief of legal, law firm partners we want to get in front of. But social media generally, the exciting part about social media, and obviously it's a mixed bag because sometimes you can get too addicted to social media, especially if you're a content consumer. It can be very addicting. But if you're a producer, it's incredible because you get such great reach. So I put up a video, right? Yesterday, I spent some time just kind of slapping together a video. And by this morning, 100,000 people have viewed it. There's very few places where you can get that kind of reach. And even if 99% of the people out there are not people you want to get in touch with, who you don't really care to introduce your product to, that still leaves 1%. And 1% of 100,000 is 1,000 people. And I can't imagine how I would get in front of 1,000 people today. If you didn't give me social media, what am I going to do? Make 1,000 phone calls? Like it's going to be very hard. And so to answer your question, it's really been helpful to get the word out about Evisort, about what we do here. And also I would say LinkedIn as well, because LinkedIn is a little bit different than TikTok in that the reach is a little bit lower, but the people on LinkedIn you can see their job titles, and you can see, I have a lot of connections who are heads of legal, general counsels, chief legal officers. Like, that it's an executive audience. And so that's why you got to control and modulate your content depending on which audience you're trying to target.
Definitely. And to elaborate more on, TikTok, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, TikTok's just for kids. Like, how can you generate leads from that? Can you talk about how you built your sales funnel through TikTok? Because I think that's super valuable for a lot of us to hear.
Yeah, I have a unique approach that may change by the time this podcast is published, but I'll tell you, I'll share it right now just because I think it can be helpful for so many people. As Maggie alluded to earlier, my TikTok is my lab. It's the place where I experiment and try weird things. And I wait and I see what kind of reaction people will have. And it's not just view counts and comments and likes. I also have a link in my TikTok that asks people to fill out a Google form to introduce themselves so I can understand who's watching. And I've been very surprised and that a lot of the people who watch are older professionals. They're not kids. Now, occasionally, I think when a post goes viral, that's more kind of a general topic. Maybe it's a younger group that comes in, and I've detected some patterns with who comes and watches my stuff. But when I do the legal focused TikToks, the view counts are lower, but the quality of the people are higher because they work for law firms, they work for legal departments, they're in legal tech. And so I think that over the last 6 to 12 months, we've seen a change, right, of people on TikTok. I think a year ago, it was a lot of younger people using it for fun. I've seen a lot of lawyers now go on TikTok to do marketing. I've seen other B2B companies be on TikTok, and I've witnessed leads come in. Like, so about a couple of weeks ago, I had a sales call where I spoke with a gentleman who was the director of operations at a company, and I was introduced to him, and then he said, "I'm really glad you're on this call, Alex." And I'm like, first of all, no one ever says that they're really glad to see a salesperson on the call. So I was like, you have my attention now, right? And then second, he was like, he talked like he knew me, and I was like, do we know each other? And he said, I saw that TikTok that you put up on LinkedIn. So it was one that succeeded on TikTok that I put on LinkedIn. He's like, I saw that TikTok, and I was like, well, we're looking for contracts technology solution, so I figured we should set up a demo with your company. And It just so happened that it got to me. But these are the paths, right? Content is a way to provide a magnet for buyers to reach you instead of you, what we'll call push marketing, where you kind of try to go out there and push your message on to people. It's pull. And while pulling can be challenging because you don't have a predictable system for figuring out leads, it's amazing because the reach is high. It works while you sleep. Like when I'm sleeping, it's still being brought out, the content. And it also allows buyers a better experience because they will reach out to you when the time is right for them, not when the time is right for you as a salesperson. So there is a funnel, but I would also see it as not a funnel, but also a journey, like the buyer's journey, right? A buyer is trying to be entertained, be educated. And when they see this content, they know you now, and they will reach out to you when the time is right. So it's been a learning experience for me. That's how the funnel works. And I layer this on for my, just to kind of tie it back to my day job. I still do cold calls. I still do cold emails. I still do the traditional ways of reaching out to people. But this is just a kind of a secret sauce, a kind of magic pill to get even more leads in that can be helpful.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we know that you went into legal space after a traditional private firm. We have a lot of people in AHN who are in law or trying to get into legal tech. And Brian always talks about, he has a lot of lawyer friends who don't want to be in big law anymore. And they want to transition.
They're about done.
Yeah, they want to transition into a non-legal career. And that's exactly what you did. Can you talk a little bit about what that transition process was like for you? And when was that point in time where you were like, okay, I think I'm done with big law. I want to transition into like a non-legal career.
I do want to touch on the emotional side as well. Like, what were you feeling emotionally at the time that led to this decision? Because originally you were living in New York with your wife, and you decided to uproot everything and move to San Francisco. What was that emotional drive that propelled you to take so much action to do something about it?
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that a lot of lawyers are unhappy with their jobs. I was as well. A lot of lawyers are. And, it was really a journey for me because, so I went to law school. I wanted to be a lawyer primarily based on what I saw on TV and I didn't know any lawyers. I came from an immigrant family. We didn't know any lawyers. I thought that being a lawyer was something entirely different than what it ended up being. But I was successful at it, and I made my way into a structured environment where I just hated my job, like a big law firm where I hated my job. And so to kind of, for me to get over that, I started working on volunteer projects. I did things on the side, right? I started volunteering for local campaigns because I love politics, and I wanted to support Asian Americans who were really coming up at the time in New York in the political scene. There was a guy named Kevin Kim. He's he ran for city council. He was a lawyer like me, very similar background. I think he was a Korean American guy. There was also Grace Meng, who is now the first, I think, Asian American congresswoman from New York. She's been in office for a while. So I volunteered with those campaigns, and I remember the first time I walked into Grace Meng's campaign office, I thought, well, here I am, a lawyer. I'm going to do something very brainy, something intellectual. I'm going to write a paper, do policy. And I remember her campaign manager was like, look, Alex, we're glad for your help, but we don't need help with that. we need somebody to do field operations. I'm like, okay, field operations. That sounds cool. What's that? And they're like, we need somebody to knock on doors and make cold calls.
Oh, no.
And I was like, all right, well, not exactly what I wanted to do and what I signed up for, but I'll do it, right? Because this is, I feel passionate about it. So I did that job. And by the way, I'd done cold calling jobs before. In college, I did the alumni fundraising job. I have I don't know if you guys had that experience, but it's it's a good experience. I'll just say that, right? Because you learn how to take rejection. And then my buddy, one of my best friends from high school, ran a mortgage company, and I tried working for him one summer just to see what it was like. And I just cold called, tried to sell mortgages, but I didn't like that. I couldn't do it. So I was a little bit nervous, but I found that when I worked for someone who I believed in, a cause I believed in, I was exceptional at cold calling and door knocking. Like I was able to just really, really get aggressive and make a lot of calls. So this was probably around the time I was a junior lawyer. I was volunteering on political campaigns on the side, and I knew that I was good at calling, and I knew that I had this ability to persuade people, because I look back on my career and all of the times, all of the big opportunities I received, the firm I worked at, the judge I clerked for. I was a commencement speaker at graduation. I have this ability to reach out to people and persuade them to do things. It's a kind of the reason why I wanted to be a trial lawyer. It's also the reason why I'm a salesperson today. But I think the advice is really to try something different, because those side projects, those volunteer opportunities will teach you a lot about what you're talented at. Mm-hmm. Right. And when you find something that you're talented at, make the move with that information and don't be afraid to start at the bottom. And I think here's where it got really challenging, right? Because I knew I had this talent. And when I joined the legal tech scene, I didn't join in as a VP. I didn't join in as a director. Mm-hmm. I joined in as an entry-level salesperson at the age of 33, mm-hmm. 6 years out of law school, where I was very successful. And they were like, okay, why don't you take this phone and just make hundreds of calls? Like, this is what we want you to do. And I'm like, do you know who I am? Like, yeah. I'm a fancy pants lawyer, right? Yeah. And I was, my managers were younger. They all fit a certain mold in tech sales. You typically have these sales bros. And I felt like I didn't really fit in. I was really smart, but all these people were like higher than me on the company. And I was like, did I really go to law school and work that hard so I could just make cold calls? Like, how do I explain this to my parents? How do I explain this to my wife? How do I explain this to my friends? And my friends pulled me aside and they said, hey, Alex, look, sales is hard. If this doesn't work out, like, don't blame yourself. Like, they were trying to warn me that sales is actually very difficult, especially for just anybody. Mm-hmm. But I was like in my early 30s, starting over against these, what had in the past been successful salespeople. They were these young guys who played college sports. They're all white men, and all up the org chart, the VPs of sales. Like, that's what they all look like. And so, I really, I had a little bit of self-doubt. I think it was helpful that I had a lot of experiences dealing with setbacks and overcoming setbacks, but it was hard. And it was hard not just because the job was hard, but it was hard to explain to people. My very well-meaning family and friends who were like, Alex, what are you doing? Like, why are you starting over like this? Mm-hmm. So that was me in the beginning of legal tech. And I ended up doing really well because I picked a job that was based on my strengths, not based on what was prestigious, what my family wanted me to do, what other people wanted me to do. I did what I enjoyed and what I thought was good at. And it led to a lot of success, to the point where now people ask me, like, how do I get myself into your position? And it's hard, right? Because I don't have a formula, but all I can say is that if you know what you're good at and what your talents are, just move in that direction, even if it means you have to start over. So that's the advice I would give. A lot of people ask me about it. I have no prescribed formula for you. All I can say is figure out where your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and just go where your strengths are valued and your weaknesses don't matter. And don't be afraid to start from the bottom, because you'll grow very fast.
Wow. I love that so much. That's really good advice. And I think that a lot of people get turned off if they have to start from the bottom again. And, they probably have the same perspective as you do. Like, do you know who I am? Like, you're asking me to do this kind of job when I already have so much experience, but you really just have to take a step back and, really trust the process. And that's exactly what you did.
I feel you in that. Yeah. I mean, I have started over myself. I know. It's not the best feeling, but it's also the greatest feeling, because the greatest joy that you can ever do is being a student again and being passionate about this new path you're embarking, because when people look at their lives, they look at it in the very short term. It's like, how's my life looking the next 3 to 5 years? When you look at your life holistically, honestly, if we continue working, we can go past 65, 70, 80. That means that there's 40, 50 more years to make an impact. So why are you dreading over a couple of years? That's like in a long scheme of things, it's so insignificant. Your happiness, your mental health, it's more important than ever.
Yeah, I think a lot of people stick with the timeline for their life, and they feel like they have to absolutely stick to it. And if it goes off track, nothing's going to work out. But
yeah, we have friends like that.
You have to think holistically. And I know you mentioned you don't have one specific formula of how you got to the position where you are at now. But I do have a question about the demographic. When you were first starting out in sales and you were surrounded by all these, white men who are already very experienced in sales. Can you explain, if you have any advice on how Asians can work towards getting promoted to higher positions and top management roles?
Yeah, because that is one of our core values of Asian Hustle Network is we want more Asians to higher investment in corporate ladders. There seems to be a bamboo ceiling that, whether we like it or not, has always been there and will continue being there till we hear from people like yourselves trying to break through.
Yeah, I've experienced it. Obviously being in law and in sales, these are positions that, typically a lot of white men are in higher positions. And the advice I would give is there's a few pieces, right? I think there's a couple of themes. The first is the culture of the organization. I have found that smaller companies are less political, because if you can't produce, and they promote people who don't produce, people, presumably who seem to be very good in boardrooms but can't produce results, that company is going to die. And so I think smaller entrepreneurial organizations provide more of an opportunity for you to get promoted. My first legal tech job, I was promoted probably twice every year in the 3 years I was there. It was very, very fast moving. And it's because Had they not done that and I left, then they just lose the value of me as a very strong producer, and the company might be hurt, right? So I think a smaller company and having a good culture, good organization culture, it's not just about, what leadership looks like, although it does matter, right? If the execs all are white men, there's a high likelihood that that's not the culture that can enable you to succeed. Mm-hmm. You want to look at the leadership and the culture. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I've always been a fan of being in a role that's connected to revenue. Being connected to revenue gives you a lot of opportunities. So I think for example, a lot of Asian Americans I've noticed want to take more of a support role or a service role, thinking that, there's a lot of pressure that comes with being connected to revenue, like quotas or having to close deals, the pressures of sales. Mm-hmm. But there's another pressure, right? If you provide a service and you're not connected to revenue, your life will always be challenging. I'll tell you, in tech companies, the salespeople always have a better work-life balance and make more money than the people providing customer support. It's just the way it works, because being connected to revenue means you're connected to one of the highest goals, maybe the highest goal of a company. And so it does come with pressures. It does come with some downsides. But I think, if you're able to do that, if you're able to take that pressure, you're going to find yourself being promoted much more quickly. Your income will grow much more quickly than if you take on kind of like a support role. So I would say my second piece of advice is make sure that you stay connected to revenue. Awesome. And then the third, and this is one where so the first two I think I've done a reasonably good job at. The third is where I've had more challenges, and it's a growth area for me, is to find an internal sponsor or mentor who will basically place a bet on you to move up. Mm-hmm. And this is very true in law firms and professional services firms. It's also true in tech companies and startups, but you need to have somebody in power invest in you. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of the reason why we lack diversity in tech, in the tech field and a lot of companies, is because it's not because these white men are getting together and saying, let's create a club and block out everyone, but it's because they mentor and sponsor and support people who remind them of themselves. And so it's not a mystery to me that I've done so well at a company like Evisort, where the CEO, a couple of the board members, we've got directors and, folks here who are Asian American. And that way I'm not worried. I'm not always worried that, oh, do I need to overcome this stereotype that I can't sell? Will they always think that I'm the math guy, the IT guy, which is a real problem. There's people like Jerry has always watched out for me. And so I think that if you want to succeed, you need to have someone in leadership to watch out for you and to mentor you and sponsor you. So I would say those are the three ways that you can really overcome that bamboo ceiling.
Wow, that's really, really good advice. I had to take some notes in between because I'm like, wow, you're absolutely right. I mean, it really did open my mind that, people as humans, we want to mentor people that look like us, sound like us, remind them of us, And unfortunately, it's just, I don't know if this is the right word, but like a broken structure. Whereas because we're not the same, because we historically have been considered not American or not within this country. So that's also creating more barriers for us to get to the top. Mm-hmm. I do want to circle back on the conversation about mental health and happiness. Mm-hmm. We heard so much about your transition and your abilities to succeed in a new role, but we also want to understand, was there a series of events that happened that led up to you being extremely unhappy with your current position that led you to create a 100% career change, start over again? And on top of that, we also want to touch upon the mental health aspect of creating content. That takes a huge toll on you because now you're addicted to the metrics, the analytics, the numbers. Mm-hmm. How have you coped with both sides as you're going throughout your career?
Brian, these are great questions. And I feel like you're asking the questions that I would ask myself, right? Because they're so relevant. Why did I leave law to do sales and start from the bottom? And you're right that there was a lot of challenges. And I didn't, the first time I thought about leaving law I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to stay in law. I'm not going to leave. I thought that things would get better if I switched firms. So I left a big law firm. I went to a smaller firm. Things didn't get better. And then it wasn't until I started my own business, I opened my own law practice. That's when I realized that I should be focused on on doing something that was more connected to sales than connected to law. And I'm telling you right now that I've switched jobs a couple of times, but during that time, it was very challenging because I started thinking questions like, I've been a successful person. I'm now doing things that a successful person would not do.
Right.
I saw other people doing well. I saw other people getting promoted, making money, getting all the great jobs. Meanwhile, I'm like going from job to job. And I remember thinking this, telling my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, I think that maybe I'm not the type of person that does well at a company. I'm not a good employee. Like my experiences at IBM, my experiences at the big law firm made me believe that I was not a good employee. That was just part of my personality. So I should start my own business, which is what I did. I started my solo practice, and I eventually had to close it down because it failed. I couldn't get enough revenue. I realized that I enjoyed sales and marketing, but actually servicing the clients, that was a little bit more challenging for me. And I was thinking, what am I doing here? Like, I'm at a point where I have a law practice that's taking cases that I never imagined I'd be taking, and it's not great. I'm not making money. Maybe it's time for a new start. And so when I talk on some podcasts or when I talk to younger lawyers, I have a narrative. I say, I tried different jobs. It wasn't right for me, and I started over. But the truth is, I felt like I was failing from job to job. And it wasn't until I struck this legal tech space that at the time when I joined legal tech, it was not a thing. It's still kind of small now, but it's growing so fast. But back then, nobody knew about it. And it was very hard for me to explain to anybody, let alone myself, that this was the right thing that I should be doing. But I had already failed at several things. And I was like, all right, well, my once very nice resume is now messed up. I've got failures left and right. What's the harm in failing again? So I could run off and kind of be a little bit reckless and join legal tech and kind of go with my career hunch. That's what that was the real change. And that's why it's like, I get messages from lawyers all the time saying, tell me about the structure that you followed to make yourself happy and find the right role for yourself. It's hard to say. Yeah. You haven't earned it until you've failed again and again. And you think, what the hell am I doing? So that is, I think, for me, an important part of transformation is that failure, and it comes with a lot. And I know, Brian, you've dealt with your own setbacks before, and you've overcome them. That when you're going through it, it's not like, oh, everything will work out fine. When you're going through the midst, it ain't easy.
You're just stressing out left and right.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're always putting one foot in front of the other. And today we're talking about TikTok and my success with social media, but that was just an unexpected upside of being in sales in an early stage startup. Like, I could never have predicted that this would happen, but it's now happened. And so that would encourage people to try things, to go out and fail, because you might hit on something that does as well as you expect, but it actually might surprise you and turn out better than you expected. And that kind of leads me to my second point, which I know your other question was, how do you handle mental health and social media? I'll tell you, if you treat social media like a job, you can get a lot of results and not have it take over your life. But it does require you to be super disciplined. And so my journey really on LinkedIn started about a year ago when one of my posts went viral and collected 1 million views. And I was like, all right, well, I really want to triple down on this. Yeah. And what's not going to work is if I just kind of try to do this sporadically, like every so often. I need to have a system. So I told myself I would post 1 post per day, and I would write them on the weekends or nights and pre-queue them. And that way it would not interfere with my work life, my personal life. And for the most part, I was successful. And over time, though, I think it became challenging, and it came to a point where I was kind of a little bit less disciplined. And I needed to take a step back and say, okay, am I doing social media because I just want the attention, or is it serving a greater goal in my life? Mm-hmm. And so when I realized that, I was kind of at some point was just getting a lot of engagement just for the sake of getting engagement, I scaled back my production of content to less frequent and higher quality. Like what I could tell, like I put more effort into each individual post and did less frequency. Mm-hmm. And I found that even though overall likes and views went down, the type of people I was trying to get in touch with, the quality was increasing. It was not impacting my leads. I was still getting business out of it. I just wasn't getting, those strangers to like my content. So I think to balance it, you really always have to remember, what are your goals? Why are you doing this? Like, it can be easy to fall into the trap of getting addicted to the likes. And I've been guilty of that before as a content creator, because it makes you feel like the more likes you get, the better your content is. It's like the world telling you that it's good, which is true to some extent, but you don't want to overdo it, because if you overdo it, then you're trying to collect likes and followers for the sake of likes and followers. And I tell you, that's not a good path to go down.
Right, right. So important. Yeah, we see that all the time on TikTok. You have users who just post quantity over quality, and you do get, likes and comments and stuff like that, but it's not sustainable.
Or more on the X-rated side of things.
Yeah.
Just trying to sell their bodies for likes and comments and approval, and that's not the way to go. And you bring up a really valid point too. Like, ask yourself, what kind of message are you trying to make by making your videos? It's whatever we notice, like Alex, like whenever you post a video, it always has a purpose. It has always a story to it. It's not like you getting on to stage in like a mini skirt and shaking your body. There's always like a theme to it. And it's like very humorous, that connects to your uniqueness, your experiences, that also links back to your own professional career too. So we really love that.
Yeah, and I'm very curious, you have a family, you have a wife, you have a kid. How do you find time out of your day, and how do you manage your time and, just make sure that you're utilizing your time correctly? Because, TikTok takes a lot of time, as we know.
And the amount of video consumption you have to make in TikTok to keep up with the trends.
Exactly. And so I'm very curious, how do you, what is your day-to-day routine like every day?
Yeah, I don't have a routine, and I think that the way that I've been able to do it is, like I said, I have some strengths. I have been a content creator for a long time, so I probably don't need to absorb as much from TikTok as perhaps other people do, because I kind of understand the themes of what I'm going to create legal content, and I know how to stay within those confines. If I were to make content like a comedian or somebody in the medical field, I would need to take up a lot more time to do that. And so I would say that if you post about what you know, it's going to be a lot more efficient. Some of the videos that I make seem like they would take a long time, but they really don't, because, and this is the other reason why. Well, first, it's because I post only on things I know about and I can speak to. Right. But second, the way that I developed video making skills, and everything I think is skills. Like, I don't think that anybody should think of content or TikToks or LinkedIn or Twitter or anything as an asset, but you should think of it as a skill, because a skill stays with you. We don't know what's going to happen to the algorithms. We don't know what's going to happen to the platforms. I had a Vine account 5 years ago. Vine is gone, right? And so it's the skill that matters. And that's why I think when you make videos, I mean, it's fun, but just remember that you're trying to up-level your skills and understanding the patterns. And so I started my skill development during the depths of COVID. Mm-hmm. When COVID hit, I had a lot of free time. I mean, I didn't have a ton of free time because I have a family, but I had enough free time because my work had slowed down because we weren't sure what was going to happen. And so instead of kind of just watching TV, or I don't really watch TV, I don't watch movies, I spend all of my time thinking, what can I make? Mm-hmm. And so during that time, I experimented with making videos. And so I had developed the skill to the point where by the time I had got on TikTok, I already had skills. I had skills from creating content for all sorts of platforms for 15, 20 years. I also had 6 months of intense video making experience. I don't know if we've talked about this, but I also host this monthly meetup that I used to host twice a week with mm-hmm. lawyers and law students. Wow. And so that helped me understand how to present myself through video. And so if you treat this TikTok or this content creation as a job, and you'll notice this theme, right? If you treat it as a job and are disciplined with it and treat it as a long-term skill that you want to develop, I think the rewards are really, really high. Like what I'm doing now does not take a lot of energy. It's highly scalable because I make one video once and it just goes and repeats and shows to everyone. Yeah. but there were lots of hours and disciplined work that went into it for years with no real results that I did for fun as a thing to entertain my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's how I balance it. And look, at the end of the day, I think what TikTok and LinkedIn and social media has done is it's replaced a lot of what I used to do on making cold calls.
Mm-hmm.
It's replaced a lot of my outreach just because now I can have a more efficient way of doing it. Even when I reach out to some people, I'm also able to say, hey, it's Alex from LinkedIn. They know who I am. In the past, I would have to explain myself a lot more and they would ignore me or hang up on me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also doing webinars for Evisort where we bring in speakers and bring in basically people who we would want to sell to. They show up, and then I can also choose who I can, I'd like to reach out to. So these things, this TikTok stuff and this LinkedIn stuff has replaced traditionally the inefficient ways of doing sales outreach for me. And that's how I've been able to juggle it. But I'll end off by saying this, which is it's still hard to balance. I think especially what I've learned, and I'm a new father. My daughter's 2 years old. Mm-hmm. I don't really know how other people do this, have jobs and also kids. My parents did it. I saw them do it, but now I'm just that was insane. How do you handle that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to learn, from other people, how they juggle it. My wife's a doctor, and she works. And so she's very I don't think we have a family where we can have one parent stay home and just watch the kid. We've got to learn how to balance it. So it's an ongoing process, really.
Wow.
Love it. Yeah. I mean, it's just everything you said. I think that, us seeing you as who you are today, we're not seeing who you are today, but we're seeing all the fruits of your labor that was accumulated from all those years of putting in the hard work.
That's what I keep telling Maggie over and over. It's all these successful people did not become successful overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some exceptions, but most of the time they're not.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we have a last question for you, Alex. What advice would you give to someone who is trying to get into legal tech or just someone who's trying to build their influence on social media?
Yeah, the first one's easier for me just because I've been living it. But, for legal tech, if you're interested in it, you don't have to be a lawyer. I do think it's a promising space that's going to grow really fast. Dive in and take whatever job they're offering. And I think by slowing down, by starting from scratch, you develop these foundational skills that will compound over time. And then when you've built up that knowledge and those skills, you're going to move up very fast. So don't worry about taking a job at the bottom. So if you find an interesting company, I'm hoping that Evisort is it. Reach out to me or Jerry or anybody else on the company. But I would say just jump in. And my advice for content and social media is very similar. Most of the time, people are afraid to put out content. They overthink it. Right on their first post, they say, "I have to put out the perfect post."
Yeah.
What I would encourage people to do is instead put out 20 imperfect posts, and by doing that, you will see what people resonate with. Because I think the thing that people don't realize about content and social media is that it's not about you; it's about your audience and what your audience wants. I sought out to be a very intellectual lawyer to write about serious subjects. And the world told me that the audience told me that they were not interested in that. What they were interested in was, how did you pivot out of law? How did you find another opportunity? They're interested in seeing law firms and lawyers being made fun of on TikTok. And so by paying close attention to what the audience wants, you can create some really compelling content that will provide you a lot of value in your life, but it's got to be about the audience first. It's not about what you want to do. And that's an ongoing process that you've got to continue this conversation. I went in the early days when I had very limited engagement on LinkedIn, I would ask the people who consistently like my stuff, "Hey, can you hop on a call with me?" And I would talk to them and try to understand, what are you thinking? What do you worry about? What are you excited about? Tell me about yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I have a deep understanding of my audience, which is why I'm able to, and they are my core audience, and which is why I'm able to branch off. And it was those people who told me, "You need to get on TikTok. You need to keep making fun of lawyers." And that's why I keep doing it now, because it's what they told me that they wanted. So I think listening to your audience is super important. And you can't do that until you put out a bunch of content that's going to fail. So anyways, that's my advice for anybody who wants to get in the game. It's really interesting. It's an interesting time, but I think there's a lot of opportunity on TikTok right now.
Awesome.
So true. So true. And Alex, where can our listeners find out more about you online?
I would recommend that you reach out to me or find me on LinkedIn first. That's where I have most of my content. There's going to be a link, I think, in this podcast show notes. Mm-hmm. But also, if you're up for it, check me out on TikTok. I'm Legal Tech Bro. You can just search Legal Tech Bro. And it'll pop up my page. TikTok and LinkedIn is where I live. I have other accounts elsewhere, but if you want to reach out to me, those are probably the best places.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Alex. We really enjoyed it. And yeah, I can't wait to be in touch with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. It was amazing.
Brian and Maggie, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on the show. And I'll tell you that I've heard about you way before we first met. I went back and I looked. 50 of my friends are part of the Asian Hustle Network. Wow. I'm probably the 51st now. So it's an honor for you to invite me onto the show. And I really had a good time.
It was an honor having you on.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the show.
We would like to get to the top 10 on iTunes, so be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We release an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned.
Thank you guys so much.